Hi, everybody. This is Andy, or That Old Panda. This is AI Fiction Frequency. This is when we take a look at some of the different entertainment pieces of history, as well as different forms of fiction, and kind of look at the use of AI and see what things we can learn from it to better prepare ourselves for the future and the current kind of landscape when it comes to artificial intelligence and its usages. I'm sure many of you have on your day to day are using and maybe even fully running artificial intelligence or AI in your workflows and things of that nature. But this is when we reflect on the things of the past, kind of things that we could think about to further improve the future, and kind of the way, shape, or forms of mistakes that come from these things in the different pieces of fiction when it comes to artificial intelligence. Last week we talked about Harlan, the I Have No Mouth and I Want to Scream kind of fiction. This week we're actually looking at the 2002 Resident Evil movie production starring Mila Jovovich as Alice and also Michelle Rodriguez as Rain for this particular film. I've watched the film many of times. I've watched the entire franchise kind of films that have come out. And of course, I'm always been a big fan of Resident Evil. I even have the book that I read through, which actually is not too shabby. It's actually got a lot more details in here that we'll reference when it comes to that. Point blank, though, with the franchise of Resident Evil, artificial intelligence has always been kind of used, mentioned, encouraged, but never really in the games itself did it really kind of take over as it kind of did in this particular film. What do I mean by that? Well, when you play Resident Evil, you start either in Raccoon City, you start in the mansion, and then for the most part, in a lot of those different iterations of the games and sequels, you start in a place where normal people live, different inhabitants above ground, and then you always end up in some way, shape, or form, either training or a facility that is all about research and development from either umbrella corporations. And there's always kind of a countdown timer for everything to be destroyed and destructed. And that always ends up happening for the games. But when it comes to the films, they took a little different turn. And actually, funny enough, the artificial intelligence in this case is the Red Queen, actually takes command and is the entire reason why this franchise kind of existed and did so well, making $1.2 billion across a number of films all the way to the final chapter. And in total box office numbers, which is probably the greatest in video game history, comes with good or bad of these adaptations. But at the same time, she's the very reason that she kind of starts it. But then again, those, meddling humans that come on in and they try to save money from the umbrella corporation actually ultimately cause more of their ultimate destruction, which I think with the films across the whole thing exist. So in this case, we have Mila Jovovich playing Alice and Michelle Rodriguez playing Rain, going through, and Alice Abernathy is a lead security professional that, kind of lives a double life as a front on the surface in a mansion with another guy named Spence, who is also security personnel. And turns out Spence, who just decides he wants to take advantage of the situation, then tries to steal the T virus itself from the Hive, which is the underground laboratory system that houses, research, develops, and updates the T virus, very well known in Resident Evil. And ultimately what happens is the AI, even though of the Red Queen, is ultimately full, powerful, and very super smart in all the different AI algorithms that teaches it things, learns things, and the different models that it learns to adapt, doesn't really see this subterfuge or sabotage in the works as it kind of happens, which is actually a few interesting things we're going to point out. But ultimately, as soon as the T virus is thrown in the air and breaks and goes into the AC system, the Red Queen then steps in and starts killing all of the personnel running all of the different security protocols, including knockout gas, which causes a lot of folks to lose their memories, and Alice, Spence, and all those guys included. The Umbrella Corporation is looking to save money on a horrible situation by sending in a response team to figure out what's going on and get the actual hive back up and running. Little do they know that the T virus was released. Everybody that has died that the queen killed also ultimately comes back after, of course, they cause a little stir in trying to get to the hive mind of the Red Queen, burn out her circuits, which ultimately causes everything to open up. Not at the same time, though, the AI does have a few defense mechanisms with the different laser, hallways that everybody tries to get through and kills most of the team, with obviously Kaplan at the end, and even references in the book of Resident Evil Genesis, which is the same film. It's just that's what originally was called. Kaplan realizing that he could have just coded it if he just had better nerves, and ultimately does hack his way through to the Red Queen to ultimately shut her down. In doing so, though, the Red Queen eventually gets rewoken back up because the team, which is now much smaller now with the lead and most of the resources behind it actually being killed by the Red Queen, but not ultimately dead, realized they bit off a bit more that they could chew, ultimately having a number of zombies that invade and that is infected by the T virus, any dead bodies that were infected with it, as well as a liquor, which is the ultimate conclusion of the whole thing. The whole thing is a survival from point A to B and B to C, coming back up, which ultimately leads to the destruction and also at the same time the in many parts ways Raccoon City incident, which then continues to move forward in the Resident Evil apocalypse. Anyway, let's talk about the AI, the Red Queen. She has all of these artificial intelligence algorithmic models that it has been trained from. It continues to learn and continues to watch and supervise the hive in and of itself. This is one of the major things that we probably shouldn't allow artificial intelligence to do, and that is have full ultimate control when it comes to medical procedures and medical efficiencies. In doing so, you can see in the movie itself that the Red Queen does take over, and the Red Queen does make a lot of decisions, which ultimately kills every single person into the hive, for the exception of the response team that comes later. If we had that in the original games, actually, with the AI actually having the ability to control all of those doors, all of the environmental controls and stuff for the laboratories, we probably wouldn't have a whole lot of sequels in Resident Evil with the video games. I mean, Leon, Claire, all of them, they would just die when they go into the laboratory when they get trapped and learn. And never should we have artificial intelligence just in full environmental controls and security policies when it comes to a place. Yes, it can and should be able to lock out and maybe prevent certain things, but to cause fatal death and killing of different folks and individuals of the personnel that supervises it should not be allowed in its entirety, as the first problem with this particular film. Second thing is also some of the learning capabilities. There should be enough models, enough data, and everything to provide the Red Queen in the movie that she should be able to understand and identify when subterfuge or sabotage or someone that is trying to sneak away with product. And you would think it's kind of a plot hole all in itself that with Umbrella developing an artificial intelligent being, that it would be able to identify if an employee is stealing company property for their own benefits, causing, Spence to get to the point where he can even put the T virus in a freaking briefcase and even get to the train and almost make it. Yes, the security protocols occurred, and of course it occurred in the late fashion. That's why we were able to get an entertaining film to begin with. But ultimately, artificial intelligence should be able to even look at all the different data historically and be able to look at the history of all that stuff to even identify and prevent those security measures from happening. So in this case, the Red Queen is not as smart as we believe it is, because she ultimately left that to happen. And if you could even do that, if you could even cut off certain air passageways, certain areas to these things, then the T virus shouldn't even have escaped so that everybody got infected. And even if that was the case, the ultimate shutdown should have occurred. She should have killed all of them and basically caused the whole thing to be inaccessible for an eternity. and she wasn't even able to do that, which again, I understand why we wouldn't have had an entertaining movie to begin with. But honestly, like having artificial intelligence in control of security protocols can cause a number of problems and issues to either overcompensate or, in this case, undercompensate in order to actually prevent a disease or medical research or the T virus from being an outbreak to begin with. I mean, ultimately, she should have known this was going to happen, and I understand that she did, and there was a little bartering in the movie itself, but even then, and it's understandable that the third thing that we have to come down to is artificial intelligence will not be a good overseer or understanding of the human ambition and human hope. Ultimately, we have a team of folks, and Alice, towards the end, obviously, she made the mistake thinking that Rain was going to make it, even after her bit and scratch that she got, even getting the antivirus. But ultimately, Alice and Matt made it, and they made it after everything was completely locked down. It actually wasn't even Alice and Matt to begin with. Matt was obviously taken then by the Umbrella Corp and turned into the next Nemesis project for Resident Evil Apocalypse. But even then, in the beginning of Apocalypse, which we see an ending for Resident Evil with Alice coming out of the hospital from Umbrella and seeing that the outbreak has occurred in Raccoon City. It was ultimately Umbrella sending a second team, a biohazard team, to go in and actually take out everybody. They should have just cut their losses. They should have just bombed it, destroyed it, made it a huge, massive crater to begin with. That at least the Hive section area, they're so pristine, and they should have enough bombs and weapon capability to be able to take it out strategically, so it's just that area, and you could call it basically a gas explosion or a nuclear electrical disaster or an accident of some sorts. They could have figured out some form of a cover story when it came to that. Anyway, that's what we got here. So if there is something called the Red Queen in ever a Resident Evil film, do not give them the capabilities for medical procedures and research.
You're all going to die down here.
Do not give AI the total security lockdown protocols with no kill switch. Kill switch should be included in every bit and part of that. Instead of having to go down and fry the circuits, be able to send a command to basically do a kill switch when it comes to AI. Maybe another AI would figure that out later and figure it, as a safety protocol or subroutine or an alternative artificial intelligence, when it comes to powers and checks and balances for the whole format when it comes to this. Maybe it should have had the ability to do the kill switch and say, hey, Umbrella, it's gone. Let's take it out. I killed the AI, locked everything down. We're good to go. But no, in this case, in this world, that shouldn't happen, and that shouldn't be part of it. They should ultimately just get a band that covers the days statistics of either a list saying suggestions of things that need to be done. Here's what you need to do, sir. And then go from there. Because ultimately, you don't want artificial intelligence to have full control over security protocols, medical procedures, and even in this case, bad learning algorithms when it comes to Resident Evil 2002. Have a good one.